I want to welcome everyone to the January meeting of CSBARS. We have a fairly full agenda today, so I want to get started right away. And Ashley, could we do a roll call?
Yes. Dean Clancy.
Present.
Dean Gardina.
Here.
Dean Frickberg.
Present.
Mr. Kramer.
Present.
Mr. Murphy.
I'm present.
Dean Park.
Present.
Dean Pritikin.
Here.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ashley. So next I want to invite public comment. I believe anyone who wants to publicly comment can raise their hand. And if you're on a phone, I believe it's *9. It doesn't appear as if there's any public comment right now, so we can move forward with the agenda. So first up on the agenda, the December 2nd minutes were posted with the agenda online. Did everyone have an opportunity to review the minutes? Okay. Yeah, okay, any changes to those? All right, do I have a motion to approve them as posted?
I motion.
A second?
I second it.
So Dean Clancy seconded?
Yes.
All right. And Natalie, remind me, or Ashley, do we have to do a roll call vote for every vote, including the minutes?
Yes, because we're in an online format.
Right. Thank you.
Yes, sorry. So Dean Clancy.
Yes, or aye.
Dean Frickberg.
Aye.
Mr. Kramer.
Aye.
Mr. Murphy.
Aye.
Dean Park.
Aye.
Dean Pritikin.
Aye.
Dean Gardina.
Aye. Wonderful. So we do have a host of staff updates. So I would invite the staff to start on what is a fairly long list of updates for us.
I think it's me first, right? I think we're talking about the bar exam. So the bar exam that was and the bar exam that is. So just to recap from the October, I know you all saw obviously the press release and you know from your own schools, but we had 5,292 two-day passers out of 8,723. That's a pass rate of 60.7%, our highest pass rate in well over a decade. We also had 323 out of 578 attorneys pass. We call them the one day, but actually because of the remote exam, they actually did test the second day. But nonetheless, we had that 323 attorneys pass. It was historic for many reasons, the remote nature, the cut score. We were able to, this is not as historic, but it's good. We were able to release results earlier than we thought. So we released everything on January 8th. We also, that was the day when we mailed all the packets out. And I know there's been some USPS, I think maybe is the issue, but I know some of those folks who passed maybe still haven't gotten their packets, and you can request a duplicate packet. So I just want to make sure everyone knew that in case you've heard from any of your alums about wondering why they didn't get their packet. There's only been a few, but we had to send some duplicates out. And I'm not sure if it's a post office issue or not. On to the February exam. So yesterday was the date we did the admittance tickets and the mock exams open. So there's 3,582 approved exam takers for February. I expect that number to go up some because Monday was the final filing deadline for repeaters. So there's probably going to be a couple hundred that are going to get approved and move to approved status this week. So if you talk to your alumni, let them know, they should have gotten information on the mock exams last night. The one major change if they've taken the exam before is they need to log in using their NCBE number. And the information from ExamSoft includes how to locate your NCB number, but make sure everyone's reading the small print. I put that in the e-blast too last Friday, so hopefully you got that as well. So just a couple things that are coming up. And again, all these deadlines will be in what I send out to applicants and to you. But the mock exams will close on February 12th. They're required, they're mandatory to do at least 2 of them. There is one that's optional. And then February 17th is when we will start, applicants will start downloading the actual exam files. They'll have until the 22nd of February. But if they don't do the mock exams by the 12th, they get deactivated and they won't be able to download the exam files, and then they won't be able to take the exam. So all these deadlines are really important, and they've been up on our website far in advance of even our last meeting here together, but as much as you can do to amplify these messages, that's helpful for me. I see that Greg has his hand raised.
Yeah, Mr. Murphy, you have a question for Audrey?
You are on mute.
Unmute yourself, Greg.
Sorry about that. I turned off so you don't hear my dog barking when I'm not talking. My question relates to the last exam, not the February exam, and I asked it last time. You might guess what it is. I'm just curious if you have any data on, well, if you have a coefficient of reliability with respect to the last exam.
You know, Amy, I would ask you to unmute and see if you have the answer to that, since you're more into the psychometrics than I am.
We have not finalized our statistics. We have a period of cleanup in terms of the allocation and then finalize those. So we will have them probably, it's usually 4 to 5 weeks after the preliminary stats are out. So they're forthcoming.
Thank you.
Sure.
Dean Pritikin.
Yeah, so a couple of questions. One is, you mentioned so far there are about 3,500 odd people registered for February. I was just curious, I know this past October saw a big spike from typical July numbers. Do you know how this compares roughly to how many people usually register for February?
This is more in line with our usual February numbers.
Okay, so I think it was probably a one-time boost because of maybe the online format, the lowering the cut score. Now we're kind of normalizing more.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Maybe we need another data point in July, but yeah, that's right. How it's looking.
Okay. And then one other question, I don't know if this is already covered in Greg's question, but you know, the issue of the number of people who got notices from the October about whatever it's fishy circumstances with the AI proctoring, if that's going to be addressed at a different point in the meeting, I don't want to derail us, but since we're talking about the bar exam, I thought I would ask about it now.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I actually would like you to hold off until I'm going to share a PowerPoint in a second here about that process and sort of how that all unfolded and what we're going to look forward to next. So yeah, you'll have plenty of opportunity to ask me in just a minute. You know what, I will, if you don't mind, just because I have a PowerPoint to share about that, I'll skip ahead real quickly to the first year exam. So, you know, we had the first year exam, it was postponed to November. We had 298 students take that exam online, and 7 in either the LA or the San Francisco office came in person to take that exam. And we are going to accelerate the release of those results as well. So it's if it's not updated on the website, it will be today, but it's going to be February 19th instead of February 26th. So we should get those release results out on the 19th, and we will mail them out to you then as well.
Great.
Okay, so I will share my very not fancy PowerPoint. Oh, host is disabled screen sharing.
Sorry about that. Let me see if I can fix that real quick.
No worries. I can always email it to you and we could circle back if not.
Okay, it should be, do you see an option to share screen now?
Oh, I have more powers now. Thank you. I think this is the right one. Do you see the PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So Amy is here as well, but I'll mostly be doing the talking. So this is somewhat of a recap at the beginning about what the Chapter 6 process even is. It's Chapter 6 of the admissions rules. You know, it covers exam conduct, reports of conduct violations, how we notice applicants, how we sanction applicants, rules around administrative hearings, and then the review of findings. So I just referenced that so we can kind of level set what we're talking about. We also have a decision matrix that we initially devised with the in-person exam in mind. And then in advance of the first remote exam in June, you'll remember that we revised the matrix. After that, we brought it back to the Committee of Bar Examiners before the remote bar exam in October to make a few weeks, like we deleted out references to having not, getting any kind of sanction related to an animal in the room. That's something that changed. And then we published post-exam FAQs. If you didn't know, they're published there on the website that include references to all these rules and guidelines and to the decision matrix. So October, after the exam soft review, we had 3,190 applicants out of the 8,920 online complete, so not partial takers, folks who completed the whole exam, were flagged in the software. So that's about 35%, which was a large reduction from the first year exam in June, where we had over 90% flagged. Again, you'll probably remember all this because you've been with us on this journey. The 3,190 applicants were divided between Office of Admissions staff and trained experienced proctors for review. We issued 432 Chapter 6 notices. Notice is a chance to respond. You have 10 days to respond from a notice, and it's not at all a determination. So those 432 applicant videos, along with those responses that we received during those 10-day windows, were reviewed by management teams. And then from that 432, 48 Chapter 6 notices were affirmed from that level of review. There were 3 additional Chapter 6 notices affirmed for not uploading proctoring video. So no, there were no videos there to look at. The process was complete before the accelerated release of results on the 8th of January, and applicants whose notices were affirmed had their grades released as well. So things that were common in affirmed notices: leaving camera view, not just like I'm out of, I lean back and I'm back. That was something that, it was leaving camera view, getting out of your seat for an extended duration of time. Having paper in sessions other than the PT, having a pen, and electronic devices. I would say that were most common. And Amy and I, we did review all 432 of those personally. So those were very common things that were affirmed. So in November, so we already did another remote exam since then. We iterated again on this process. So we revised the forms and review process to be more clear in what we're sending out based on this iteration from October, where we really got a lot more. We had such a huge pool, 8,920, to really make sure that we're iterating on this process and making it better and easier for ourselves and the applicants. And this time the staff reviewed the flagged videos, but did not issue the Chapter 6 notices until the management team reviewed the incident reports. So whereas the process in October was similar to what we do in an in-person exam, where the staff would issue a Chapter 6 and then the applicant had 10 days to respond, and then at our management level, we reviewed those 432 notices. This time we kept that management review at a next level down, so making sure that we review the incident reports before a Chapter 6 notice goes out. And this seems to be, the numbers again for November are there. The percentage of applicants flagged is around the same. I reviewed 20 incident reports. Again, this is a smaller pool, but kind of demonstrative of how we might be making better changes in terms of our remote exam process. And then only 4 Chapter 6 notices were issued out of those 20. So hopefully I'm making sense. The noticing was happening after management reviewed the incident reports and not happening at the initial staff level. And that was a major change in this past review process from the baby bar. And that's it out of that. But I can reshare if anyone wants me to go back to it and has any questions. I see questions. I think Dean Pritikin, since you had questions you were holding, you can release them.
Well, Greg might have had his hand up first. I don't want to.
Oh, I didn't see because I was sharing. So,
okay.
out of the cases where applicants disappeared from view for what you call an extended period of time, I know that's a relative term, but was there a typical explanation for that? I mean, obviously that's a concern for reasons we all can imagine anyway, but I wonder if the responses were typical.
A lot of the time the applicant, when they would write in, they said that they disappeared, they left their seat for an extended period of time to use the restroom. But that's, again, something it's, you know, exam security wise, it's hard to, you know, you can't let that go.
Yeah. So what would happen if somebody did, I mean, obviously you just take their word for it that that's what they did? I mean, they could.
I mean, we affirm.
In other words, there's no way to check effectively whether an applicant has gone and reviewed some materials and then come back the exam.
Right, which is why we would affirm those notices where they left for a long duration.
Oh, I guess I don't know what affirm means. Does that
mean right, sorry. It means that we would sanction them. So the notice goes out and it's just like this happened, tell us what happened. And then the sanction is what we call an affirmed notice. So we would sanction those folks who left their seat, their exam area for an extended duration.
And what does sanction mean? What happens?
It's a sanction of a 0 for the session observed.
Thank you.
So to go back to the numbers then, so, you know, I think there had been media reports that, you know, 3,000 odd people got notices that they had a potential violation. You're saying it wasn't nearly that number. It was actually 400.
No, and you know, I think that just got, we shared all these that initial number back in the December meetings. We probably, meaning I did, we had a lot of December meetings. And that was the flags. That was how many applicants were flagged in the system for our review.
Right.
I think what other jurisdictions chose to share was actually more what we call the affirmed number. So it, like, we shared at like the most transparent first level. And I think then it kind of in the national media and in probably locally too, just people, it seemed like it was something it wasn't. So that was just the percentage of applicants back to us to review, not the notices.
So only about 432, you said, actually received notices saying, hey, there's something that was, you know, flagged as fishy. So that's about 5% of the total, right? And then of those, only 48 plus 3, 51. So about 2% of total takers actually ended up incurring, actually no, less than 2%, right?
Yeah.
It's
half a percent.
Right, 0.5% actually incurred a sanction of getting a 0 for the session.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
I have 2 questions. Did you have any situations that involved clear cheating? And the second question is, if a sanction is issued, does that create the subject of a future moral character determination problem?
Yeah, yes to both. We had clear cheating and we have sanctions. And if you look at the decision matrix that's posted on the post-exam FAQs, you can see which ones are also include a referral to moral character. You can see which ones. So yeah, so along with what we sent out with the sanctions, our moral character department got a list of ones to follow up with as well.
And Jessica, I believe you had your hand up.
Thank you. So in terms of the administrative hearing, I think a question that came up a lot in the public calls for students or for administrators is, you know, what are the students accessing at that time that is related to the violation? So has there been any sort of firming up on the procedures there about what content consistently that those students are having prior to administrative hearing? Or I'm curious, because I feel like that definitely came up.
Yes, I think what you're asking is whether or not we can send before hearing any of the clips related to what we witnessed on the video proctoring review.
Yes, I know that was being asked for a lot, but I think what I'm more curious about is there some consistent procedure that's been firmed up, you know, that's the answer to those kind of questions now?
For disputable sanctions, again, on the matrix, you can see which ones are disputable. Where an applicant can request a hearing, they can also request their video clip
Okay.
So yes, we're able to, you know, we're also learning, and some of the offices in LA, so they actually some of our staff have some editing under their belt, which is great. So we've learned and acquired ability to do some clips now of the film back to the applicant, so they can see what was clipped out of that session, where they, in the duration and what they were witnessed with.
Great. So, and they're disputable. I remember from before, those are the less serious types of violations. It's not like holding a electronic device or those kind of things. Those are more glaring. But for those where it's less serious than that, they seem to consistently get the right to review.
Yes, they can request their video clips.
Great. And is that going to be, and I'm not trying to push for it, but I'm just thinking about it. Is that going to be part of a FAQ in the future, or is it in instructions written to the students? Because, and again, I only ask this because for law school administrators, we obviously want to help students when they're really stressed or working out through an issue, but we sometimes don't know if the information they have is consistent to what another taker may have or whatever they're stressed about. So that's,
yeah, and this is pretty hot off the press in terms of us getting that all sorted out this week. And I think we should add it to the post-exam FAQs.
Great.
That would be that's a sensible place for us to add that information for disputable hearings to meet.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, is it in the letter that they receive as well?
I would have to review the letter. Yeah, I mean, the disputable sanctions.
And maybe in the future, if for the disputable sanction, disputable situation or category, that it would sort of be in the instructions to them.
Yeah, everything related to hearings, the administrative hearings are in the letter, but I wouldn't think we would have referenced it without knowing that we had the technological ability to send it. So it will probably have to be in the future.
That might be filtered in later on. Okay, great. Very happy to hear that. Definitely something that I thought would come up. And I wanted to just check into the decision matrix you're talking about. So that's an internal document to CBE staff managing the exam for working through the disciplinary decisions, but it's fully internal. I'm not asking.
I mean, it's posted on the public website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's all posted. So everything, transparent as possible. It's all posted. Right. Those post-exam FAQs, I can link it in the chat box. So if you want to see exactly where that link is that I referenced for
no, that's great.
Yeah.
I've posted that link to our students at our students.
Oh, great. Yeah. Maybe then you have to scroll through the rule. It's at it's at the end of the chapter 6 rule is the matrix. So maybe if you don't scroll, you might have missed it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Also, there's a section called the post-bar exam FAQs, and there's a link to all of that in that same document.
Great. Yeah, I think I must have been looking at it, but maybe not click through everything in it. So thank you.
Yes. Marty, is your hand still up or
yeah, I did have one quick follow-up question I forgot to ask before. So Audrey, you mentioned in your presentation there were 3 notices that got affirmed because no video was uploaded, and I wasn't sure what you meant by that.
Okay, so applicants have, and we actually extended it for video files, but by the day after the exam by noon, they're supposed to upload their answer files and their video files, and if they don't, it's up, just like their answer files not being there could be a sanction and points deducted. And so by weeks later, there were a pool of applicants who did not have any video proctoring files to review. So we would have had no idea what they were doing in their testing at home because we had no video files. Some of them, we made sure we cross-checked with ExamSoft to make sure there wasn't anything on their end. The applicants had the same, 10 days to write back to us. We reviewed what their responses were, and still there were 3 of those that got affirmed.
I see. I guess I didn't realize that they had to upload the video file. I thought it was automatic.
And it does automatically upload, but sometimes people might shut the computer and disrupt the upload. And then we've even had things where someone returned the laptop immediately and then they didn't upload their videos. You have to wait. And actually ExamSoft has done something now where the green checks to make sure that, it says you've uploaded your answer file and your video, they stay green longer, so people can make sure they get emails back too, but so applicants can make sure on their little dashboard that They can check for answer file and video file, and those green checks will stay up longer now for applicants, so they won't disappear right away. So yeah, spread the word to make sure that everyone's uploading and getting that acknowledgement that they've uploaded.
Got it. Thank you.
And Dean Frickberg, you have a question?
Sure. Audrey, thank you. First and foremost, that's very helpful. All the numbers, data, that's definitely what I like to see and understand, so I can pass it on to our students to become your examinees. It seems, if I'm following your numbers correctly, there was an increase in Chapter 6 notices, but the actual violations and affirmations seem to be pretty normal for historical norms. Is that accurate?
You know, I think that the in-person comparison, it's not apples to apples, obviously, for a lot of reasons, but it still was more than a July in person. Not by as many as you might have thought based on the notices, but it was still more than a typical July administration.
Exactly. What you were saying before about being out of the camera for an extended period of time, that's very helpful. I can pass that along, because our students were very scared if they just, as you're saying, leaned out of camera, violation immediately. So
it would be a flag. I mean, as much as you can encourage, and there's a way, and I'm actually, it's my tip of the week in the e-blast this Friday of like, just make sure you're in the camera view, because then it's still a flag. So as much as, you know, and I know it's hard, these are long exams, but the actual sessions are not that long, right? 60 or 90 minutes. So as much as you can encourage to stay in camera view, but yes, if someone leans over and sneezes and comes back, that's not going to be an affirmed Chapter 6.
Exactly. So I think they'll find comfort in that. They'll still have an issue, but it won't be affirmed as a Chapter 6 violation. The question I had was, I had multiple examinees speak with me after they received their Chapter 6 notices, and there was one I didn't understand, and this was the language on the form. The violation was, quote, other, eyes were not visible multiple times throughout each session. What is that phrasing? And again, my question is more, how can I help this not happen again in the future? What can I tell our students that become your examinees? What is triggering that?
So again, and Amy and I reviewed all 432 of those applicant videos, right? So what that meant is that the misalignment, so I looked at a lot of necks and a lot of foreheads, right? Like that meant that during an entire exam session, it might have been all I saw was someone's top of their head. That doesn't mean, obviously, we didn't necessarily affirm that, because it wasn't like they were leaving the camera view or other suspicious activity, but it's definitely a flag if like most of the applicant is so misaligned that I can't even tell, you know, where their eyes are in the view. So
then it's really the same, just being outside camera view. Their interpretation, they thought maybe they're, you know, some of us have a tendency to look up when we're thinking. They thought it was that type of action.
Oh no, if that was what it's,
when they couldn't see the eyes.
Yeah,
you know,
if all I saw was 60 minutes of beard, you know.
Yeah, no, exactly. Perfect, that's very helpful, thank you.
He just wanted to show off his beard.
Is that a pandemic beard? It's good.
The size
like
are
beard should be a new motto or something.
Can I go back to one thing that address something that Dean Park raised earlier, and that is the instructions on the administrative hearing. I just wanted to confirm before I mention this, but it is also posted in the same document. So if you go to post-exam FAQs and you click on the first hyperlink in that document, it'll take you to the rules, as well as, and that would include the administrative rules and procedures for Chapter 6 administrative hearings. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I
think would it be helpful to would be helpful to show that real quick?
The post-exam FAQs.
I think, well, I mean, actually, I shouldn't answer for everyone, but I know where the post-exam FAQs are, and I was just, yeah, just curious to make sure.
Yeah, and I think the addition of, if you have a disputable sanction, you may request your video clip. That's something that to add. That's helpful feedback from Dean Park.
And Dean Park, you had your hand up. Is there another question from you, or was it left up?
I did have 2 more questions, but I also see Greg with his hands up. Okay. So Greg, I want you to go if you're ahead of me. It's hard to track.
All right, Jack, I suspect you want to move on here, but I did, you know, with respect to the you know, eyes out of view or whatever, I gather the camera is typical computer camera, is that right?
Yeah, so, they're all supposed to have a functional internal webcam on their laptop.
Okay, so I mean, it would be possible to have someone have have information, an outline, for example, out in front of them on their desk. Is that right? And you wouldn't be able to detect that?
I mean, I've heard people have outlined for me a myriad of ways that people can cheat in the remote exam.
Yeah.
From someone standing in front of them holding a big sign. I mean, like, yeah, there's things that are outside of camera view, right? I mean, there is that world that we can't see. And,
I'm a firm believer that the vast majority of people are honorable and aren't going to cheat. I mean, I think that's the presumption. I think that's why the law requires, if you accuse someone of fraud, you got to prove it. And at least under the law of the state it's by clear and convincing evidence. So I'm just curious. I mean, if someone were nefarious, they could effectively cheat with an online exam.
I think so. Yeah. I mean,
thank you.
And people do cheat in the in-person exam. I mean, it's just a very unfortunate.
Oh, they do. It's just, it would be easier to do it in an online exam than it would be in a proctor's exam where you have eyes on the whole table and all that. It's just the nature of the beast.
I mean, I think it depends on the number of proctors per people in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think in some circumstances it might be easier to cheat in person.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had one question, and I think it's trying to sum up a little bit here, but so between the statistics and what we see, and I know we're seeing a lot of improvement. I'm really happy to see that improvement personally on the baby bar level. But, there's moving pieces or different factors each time. So I think this question, I'm going to explain it, but I do want to get this perspective because it's helpful. So there's the technological sensitivity, which is one factor. There's, the behavior of the students, which I hope is improving as they're going through improved onboarding, which is a feat in itself, by the way. Audrey, I know you are doing that with the whole team, but I just want to say kudos to that because that is a big things to manage and user interface. And then the last thing I think is more of a flagging confirmation piece, right? Because whatever the technology flags, there's also the process of, how many of those are really confirmed through more manual review. So I go through those three aspects to check, I see that improvement in numbers. Is it, all three of those being worked on really to keep improving the statistics, or is it, more of one or the other? I think a lot of questions for people is how sensitive was the technology to begin with, and has there been improvements to, improvements, of course, being a hard word to use, right? Because more sensitive probably catches more, but obviously less sensitive may mean it's directing to attention the more appropriate filtered events than before. So,
I mean, from my point of view, with the June baby bar and over 90% of our applicants getting flagged, right? By percentage, by the next iteration, it was better, but we had such a large pool. It was still over 3,000 people that got flagged, but it was better.
On the technology.
By the technology, yes. And, I think the disruption, right? The COVID disruption moved all of us in the bar jurisdictions and the exam vendor forward really quickly. And so it was already something they had. It wasn't something they were using at law schools, right? ExamSoft is used a lot of different places, but it moved some of that for this style of exam out more quickly. And even, in all the iterations that they've released since then and their own education since then, I think it's been a lot more clear. Our education is a lot better. If you'll note, like one thing, the schedule that I put together this time is not as detailed as the schedule I imagined people in October were going to take. They were going to take literally the exam start time that is ideal and start at this time, and then they were going to go through their facial recognition and end at this time. But when passwords were released, they could start then, right? So that some people were completely off that schedule because the password was released, even though they didn't have to go into the exam session at that time. And then they were even worrying, like, is this right, what I'm supposed to be doing? So now the schedule is, this is when the password will be released. You do not have to log on until this time. You have this 30-minute window. Make your own schedule. And we're trying to get that kind of our own education improvements as we have this wonderful opportunity to keep iterating on a remote exam. Like we're trying to iterate and make things so much better. And it's not, we didn't have a perfect bar exam, but in the end, I feel like the results were good, in terms of the sanctioning, proctoring, that whole process wasn't as alarmist as maybe people would have heard initially based on the flags. And then obviously the ability to have almost 9,000 people successfully take an exam and have 60% of those people pass, like it's not perfect, but we're getting there. No, I don't think we're getting to perfect, but we're really improving on the education side between us and the vendor. And you, I mean, if as much as you are reading even more than the applicants are reading what we're sending out, I think it's so helpful. Like your partnership and if you email me, I hope I get back to you right away. Like anything I can do to help you, help the applicants, like it's all a good partnership.
Great. No,
thank you, Audrey. And I am allowing us to linger on this topic because I think it's incredibly important. I know the attendees are interested in what they're learning here. I know that this is helpful for us as we prepare our graduates for what to expect in February, because as you can imagine, the notices spread like wildfire in terms of who and what, and the anxiety just ratcheted it up a little bit more for those sitting for the bar exam. So I do not want to rush so that we can be as helpful to our graduates and to the bar. And I know, Jay, you had another question.
I just wanted to address Greg's point on the ease of cheating. And I don't want to go through a parade of horribles or an instruction manual on how to cheat and encourage people. But I just like to point out, I think even in the in-person examination process, the use of virtual machines is a way that people can cheat. And again, the proctors would not know. Or even at the more base level, how do we really stop people from having outlines or cards as they go into the restroom? So I actually prefer this testing modality because rather than having someone's hearsay what a proctor saw or thought they saw, now we have an objective video, we have an objective sound recording, and we have proof, especially for something that's at this level of anxiety for everyone involved.
And so why don't we have Marty be the last question?
So actually just looking forward, I mean, I know we're talking about February, and I don't know if the bar has come to any conclusions about, is July going to be offered in an online format? And is there thought to, is this going to be the new normal even after COVID ends?
I'm not sure where we'll be with the ability to safely gather indoors in July. My hope is that I will see all of you one day inside a room and that we'll be able to at least offer the hybrid of you can come in person or online, because maybe that's where and this is just me thinking, since we've been able to do this way, will we get the direction to continue doing it this way as a choice? Or will we get the direction that we need to go back to 100% in person? I don't know, but I don't have the answer. But thinking out loud, I think, well, having it as a choice, coming to a test center or choosing online might be a hybrid that continues, but I'm not sure.
And so for July itself, they haven't made any decision yet?
Not yet.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Audrey, thank you so much for the incredibly helpful information that you provided and for all the work that you're doing to prepare the graduates for the exam and to keep us updated on everything that you're sending. And I know from personal experience that you're incredibly responsive to emails, even multiple ones, about the same graduate with the same questions. So I appreciate that very, very much.
Of course, I'm here for all of you, of course.
All right. And so it looks like we're up to the 4 administrations of the first year law students exam on the update.
Yes, so I'm happy to take that one. So there is no change to what is planned, but I'm just announcing that all of the authority has been approved and posted and available to allow students for whom the June 2020 first year was their first, second, or third opportunity to take the exam, to have up to 4 tries to take the exam in order to claim credit for their study to date. So that required a statutory change, a change to the admissions rules, a change to the unaccredited law school rules, and a change to the guidelines, and also the accredited law school guidelines. So all of those changes have been made. That has been posted, and so that will be effective through the October, we assume, 2021 exam. Any questions about that? Okay. All right, good. The next thing I wanted to share was just a quick recap of our annual law school meetings, the Law School Assembly and the Registrar's meeting. I know that many of you actually attended that meeting. Thank you. So I will just hit the highlights on a couple of things. This is the first time we did that meeting via Zoom. So in the past, you know, those 2 meetings happened in 2 instances each, one north and one south. This time via Zoom, we didn't know how that would be. And we actually got a lot of positive feedback and many people affirmatively asking if it could be continued that way in the future. So the plans have not been specifically set for the future, but people appreciated the convenience. They did feel that they could ask the questions that they had, and they were able to bring some people that hadn't seen that before, and hopefully that contributed to the rich dialogue that we had. Thinking ahead, please mark your calendars. We'll be having the Law School Assembly on September 28th. And the registrar's meeting the next day, September 29th, tentatively set for this online format again. And it was really nice to do it this way, be able to share documents easily, et cetera. There were a number of changes that happened immediately coming out of that meeting. For example, in the Ames portal, there was some wording about how we communicated to students when we were waiting to contact the schools to get your transcripts for certifications. We got feedback and were able to make a direct change to make that easier. We think it immediately reduced the number of questions that come to your registrars right away. We also were able to add additional deans and administrators to the e-blasts that Audrey has been talking about on Friday to better spread the word to students. And we got a number of other ideas that we're working on inside, some of which will be in the Law School Dean's e-newsletter that should be issuing soon. So I hope that this format was helpful. And I believe that part of the reason it was helpful was because the CSBARS weighed in on what the topics and priorities should be beforehand. So I want to thank you all for that and encourage you to think about the sorts of things that you'll want to see come fall. And with the benefit of more time, we also have more time to develop what we might want to talk about. Okay. All right, so thank you. So that's that meeting. The next one is just briefly, this presages our next discussion item, but just to let people know that the accredited law school rules proposal is posted for public comment on the State Bar's website. And just a little bit later in the agenda, we'll talk a little bit more about that and how you find all of that information. And then I have a few recent developments. The first one comes from the Office of Access and Inclusion. That office is updating its annual diversity program survey. We've heard from a number of schools, and though the survey has technically closed, we will actually be following up with any school that has not yet responded, because we really do want to hear from every school, whether large or small, accredited, unaccredited, or ABA approved, to understand what programs you have. And if you don't have specific programs targeted at retention of diverse law students, we still want to hear from you so we know exactly what is going on in each school. And the Office of Access and Inclusion asked me to let you know that they will be putting together a public report that can be shared later in the year. The intention is to summarize material at the category level. There may be a couple of schools whose programs they feature, and if they do that, they will reach out to you, but the data is expected to be released on a category level. I'm sorry, I have many reminders today. The next one is a reminder of something that all of you well know, and I'm sure you've long taken care of this, but each year in January, All accredited and unaccredited law schools are required to post their annual disclosures on their accreditation website under Business and Professions Code 6061.7a. And we thank everyone for posting those and remind you that the State Bar audits those at the beginning of February each year. So that audit will be coming up shortly, and we thank everyone in advance for your compliance. Similarly, we remind you just 2 weeks later, the 15th of February, same day that public comment closes, if your school is a fixed facility school using the committee's waiver to teach online during the pandemic, we will ask for your quarterly update. Most quarterly updates are maybe a page long. You can tell us how things are going with the online teaching. And so far, we've gotten very good reports of not only the instruction, but apparently the attendance has greatly improved through the online format. So that's very nice. Any questions about any of those?
Jessica, your hand's still up. Is that a question? No, okay.
Sorry, no, I just had it up.
Okay.
All right, it doesn't look like there's any questions, Natalie.
Okay, so I'll keep going and I'm almost done. Just 2 more. The first one is just a reminder that, of course, we always will notify all of you about CSBARS meetings, but if you're interested, for members of the public who are watching, or you're interested in knowing about other State Bar committees, on our committee page at the bottom, there is a place where you can sign up for notifications. And if you do so, every time an agenda is posted, the 10 days prior to the meeting, you'll automatically get a push notification. If materials are attached to the agenda, you'll get an additional push notification. So we encourage you to do that if you're interested. For those who attended the annual meeting, some expressed interest in knowing about the paraprofessional working group, for example, or the Commission on Access and Fairness. And you can access all of the committees on that same page. And then my final update comes from the Office of Eligibility. For those of you responsible for certifying your students to take the bar exam, there's been a little bit of confusion this year about the materials that they send. So just recently, the certification lists were sent out. Certification lists are lists of students from your school who are taking the bar exam for the first time. And we're sending a list to you to certify that they have indeed received their JD or otherwise met the requirements for the JD. We only include the first timers on there because those who are repeating have previously had that requested and you've provided that for them. So this list is smaller. It could potentially even be smaller still this year because it's possible that some of your graduates may have elected to choose the provisional lawyer licensing route at this time. And they may do that and register, but they may choose to pursue the PLP right now. So, so do not worry if you receive the certification list and it does not include your repeaters. Closer to the exam, about 1 week before, you will get an allocation list, and that should have both your first timers and your repeaters all together. Any questions about that? We've received more questions about that than usual, so I thought it was a good time for a reminder.
Jessica.
Just to check on that. So I did have 2 questions, and forgive me if this one's a really obvious one, but I just want to be sure. So, well, let me ask the first one. So with the PLP, that has to do with the currently open opportunity. And it sounds like someone can sort of check off 2 options, register and also be applying to that PLP program. Is that correct? Like, I guess that's within AIMS and everything.
I'm going to defer to Amy and Audrey as to the actual application process. I believe it's 2 separate applications that they would choose and start separately. Is that correct? For if they want to be, if they want to pursue both a provisional license and to register for the bar exam, those would be 2 separate applications.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So that's how they would still show up on the list, but it's absolutely possible that they're in PLP application as well.
Yes, they would be able to pursue both at the same time.
Got it. And
would someone though?
Yes. Yeah, we have seen that. And I believe that there have been a number of people who were part of the PLP program that did in fact pass the October bar exam. And so they will be exiting the program.
So you're not talking about the 1390s then?
No, there is a pending proposal, and I would defer to Amy and Audrey as to the status of that. I believe it is available for the Supreme Court to consider, but we haven't heard any feedback from them yet. Seeing nods. And when there is feedback from the court, regardless of what it may be, we certainly will be sharing that.
thank you. That actually was, that was one of the questions. I know that will be a big recent development once it comes up, however they decide. I'm going to go backtrack just a little bit. And again, sorry if this was the one, I apologize if it's obvious, but for the pass-fail list that came out, I just want to double check. All the Notice 6 information had concluded by the time the pass-fail list came out, or is it possible to get more information about individuals that were still having pending administrative hearings? I'm sorry if I missed that before.
I am not certain if for those who elected an appeal, if all of the appeals have been adjudicated.
Okay. So there's a possibility that for those who chose appeal, they wouldn't be in the show up in the pass-fail list yet, but they may show up as those appeal conclude.
I don't know if Amy or Audrey would have that information right now, or if that's something that I can check on and get back to you. As to sometimes there are in those cases the people would show up as append on your pass-fail list.
Okay, that's great. It was a question that our staff asked, and yeah, I wasn't sure if there was something like a placeholder marking or it would just be a follow-up letter. So I'm happy to email this later, and
you would know if anyone had pending results
through the pass-fail list, noting them as pending. Or
and everyone that was pending, anyone who was pending related to Chapter 6 is no longer pending. That's all been resolved.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. That's what I was sure about.
Oh, if they're on appeal though, so it doesn't matter. Appeals have concluded prior to the pass-fail list being released.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember all the different out of the 58, but I'm pretty sure that none of them have pending.
Okay.
So if you're disputing a sanction, it's a sanction that may not have resulted in any change of their score.
Okay. And so they would still be reported in the pass-fail list. Like there's not a reason to withhold them.
Right.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that.
All right. Thank you very much to Amy, Audrey, and Natalie for the updates. I know we spent, given what Natalie and I spoke about in terms of timing, we spent, I think, 40 more minutes on the updates than originally anticipated. But I think Audrey's presentation on Notice 6 was well worth it, given the anxiety that I think so many graduates are experiencing around the remote exam. So I think it was well worth fielding all those questions, and I appreciate the deans being so thoughtful about it, and Greg as well. So thank you for that. And it looks like, Natalie, we're ready to move forward with the small piece of work that we had planned for today.
Yes.
And were you going to share the
PowerPoint? Yeah, I'll ask Ashley to bring up the PowerPoint regarding the guidelines.
Yeah. And I can certainly wait till the PowerPoint's up to set the stage, but as one of the recent developments, Natalie noted that the rules that CSBARS and ultimately CBE worked on for really the past 2 years, but up to this point, it was 2 years ago, I think, that we started the process, are before the Board of Trustees, out for public comment. And so we're really in a holding pattern while we wait for the Board of Trustees to act on that. But that doesn't mean that we don't have some opportunities to continue to think about what a new accreditation environment might look like moving forward. So I don't know whether you could move forward to the next slide. Eventually, we'll be able to move forward to the next slide.
Sorry, can you see it?
We can not
yeah, we
yet,
can see it.
but we can certainly. I can certainly continue to talk while we're waiting for that.
Oh, you can see it. Oh no. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know.
You're just spinning. You're I think a little bit stuck. You're frozen.
I'm frozen.
Well,
oh.
It's the blue circle. The blue circle.
Oh, it's a blue circle.
That's all right. I can move forward. So we decided to do a little bit of work while we're waiting for the Board of Trustees to act. So the work that we started, yeah, if you can just move to the next slide from this place, that would be great.
Okay.
And if you're still stuck, I can bring it up on mine. Oh, good.
Is it working?
But can you move it to the next slide? All right. So
okay,
there we go. All right.
Wonderful.
So today's assumptions are going to be that the rules are adopted in their current form. We don't know if that's going to be the case, but that's what the assumption will be for today. And then if the rules are modified between now and the time that we're completing the work that we're going to do in the next several meetings, this work can be modified along with them. We're not going to vote on any potential recommendations we make until the Board of Trustees has in fact adopted a set of rules and we're confident of the language. So what we attempted to do and will start to do is to think about guidelines. And for those of you who have been on this journey with us from the beginning, you know the goal was really to attempt to make the rules the primary regulatory document that the accredited schools were subject to, rather than to have a set of rules and also a set of guidelines. But we recognize that rules could not be written with perfect clarity. So it's probable that interpretive guidelines would have to be written for some of those rules. Some of those guidelines might be able to be written before the rules go into full effect so that we would have both the approved rules as well as the interpretive guidelines in place, because we recognize ambiguity or a lack of clarity immediately. But we also recognize that guidelines might have to be created later as all of us start to implement these new rules and ambiguities come to light that we didn't recognize at first. So I don't know if you want to go on to the next one and we can talk through where we are with the proposed rules and kind of how this all fits. So as you can see, that the board, it's as we said in the Board of Trustees hands. For those of you who want to submit public comment, you still have till February 15th. The next Board of Trustees meeting is tentatively scheduled to consider all of this at its March 12th meeting. And then it's really up to the Board of Trustees. They can adopt the rules. They may seek more information, or perhaps the public comments were such that they thought revisions were necessary. They could repost it for public comment again, depending upon what kind of emerged during this interim process. And there was also, and Paul, I don't know whether you can speak to this, but I think a request by the CBE to be involved in any substantial revisions that might need to be made, or perhaps any revisions.
Yeah, we did make that request. I don't know if the Board of Trustees is going to honor it. That's not clear to me, but yeah, I would certainly like for, if there are substantial comments, we'd like to actually to consider them and then send it back to the board. I'm just not sure how that's going to happen. or if it will.
Yeah.
So Dean, Dean Gardino, what we've set up now is that as public comments are received, we will be able to access them and share them with the committee, first through the Ed Standards Committee and the committee at large, if they are received. And we'll be able to do that up through the deadline of February 15th. What might be more challenging is if feedback is received verbally at the actual meeting. That may be a challenge.
All right, thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Paul.
Well, I had the Board of Trustees meeting as the 18th. I'm not sure the 12th is correct.
Let me double check the date.
Yeah.
Maybe it changed. But.
We can go on, but I'll double check the date and we can come back and confirm.
Yeah. And just as a reminder, the Board of Trustees has the authority to approve the rules, but the guidelines are within the authority of the CBE. So while CSBARS can make recommendations to the CBE, just as we did in relation to the rules recommendation, the CBE has the ultimate authority to create and pass guidelines. And those guidelines do not have the need to go to the Board of Trustees as a whole. So just to remind people of that particular division of power. And so the adoption of the rules, the Board of Trustees would also include within that adoption, as I understand it, Natalie, the timing of the implementation of the rules. You're on mute.
That's correct, and I do apologize. Speaking of timing, last year the board met on March 12th, but this year in 2021, the board will meet on March 18th.
Great, okay, thanks. And so next slide. So just to remind people, as you know, the rules are, I just said this, but guidelines are there to interpret the rules. One of the issues, as you know, that came up in the previous or in our current rules and guidelines is that there were some guidelines that were untethered to a particular rule. But now the rules are fairly robust and the guidelines that are intended just to interpret the existing rules. And so in preparation for today, and just next slide, what I asked the deans to do is I divided the rules into sections, and I asked the deans on the CSBARS to review those sections with an eye towards ambiguity. As they attempted to implement these new rules at their school, did anything emerge that they thought was unclear or that they would have a difficult time applying in their school? And so as you can see, if you go to the next slide, what we did is we focused a lot on 4.160, which is a really big piece of what we did and where we're going to focus, at least in part today, on some of our efforts. So each of the deans looked at a particular section with that lens in mind. And so we have an opportunity, at least, to take a look at the rules as if these were going to be the rules we're operating under, identify some areas that might need clarification, and start to sketch out what might be some helpful draft guidelines that we can recommend to the CBE with the hope that as the rules come into being implemented, we have some interpretive guidelines to provide clarity as well. So where we wanted to start in the process is with 4.160A, which is the consumer protection and transparency provision. And Dean Marty Pritikin was the one who took on this. Dean Park assisted on the social media question that arose when reading these particular rules. Diversity and equity and inclusion, because the Access and Inclusion Committee was so involved in our thinking around and drafting that particular section, when we discuss any potential guidelines that might be related to interpretation of that section, we'd like the Access and Inclusion Committee members to be able to be present so we can understand and hear from them as well. And so I know that we have prepared for posting the particular guideline language, or excuse me, the particular rule language And then the proposed guideline language that Dean Pritikin and also when it came to social media, Dean Park came up with. Ashley, would it be able to, were you able to share that document?
Yes, one moment, let me pull it up.
Great. And Dean Pritikin, I'm gonna have you start with, I believe you only found 3 places where you thought it might be helpful to clarify some language in the consumer protection arena. And so as soon as we're able to get that document up, so those in the public can see it as well. And there it is. Great. Thank you, Ashley. Dean Pritikin, I'll allow you to take it from here.
Could you zoom in a little, Ash? Or great, thanks. I'm looking at it on my cell phone. Yeah, I'm looking on my cell phone, so that helps.
For sure.
All right, thank you. So obviously feel free to jump in if people have questions. So the 3 areas where I thought there might potentially benefit from clarification. So 160A1 says a law school must maintain its primary administrative office in all law school campus locations in California. So given that administration has become more and more decentralized, especially in these times, sort of like property is a bundle of sticks, administration is a bundle of functions. And so, I wanted to clarify, a lot of schools, whether they're online or not, have electronically stored data. That data might be stored on servers hosted by Amazon or Google, which might be in another state, another country. They might have certain specific administrative functions that are handled by someone who's, out of state. And, again, I don't know what's going to happen with COVID, but the school might decide that that person can continue working remotely even after COVID's over. And so you might have a career services person living in Nevada, or one person at the registrar's office living in, Missouri, whatever, right? And so, so I wanted to specify that as long as the primary administrative office and the campus location in California, it doesn't violate the rule if software, electronic records are hosted or stored outside of California, or if some student offices, services, or either offices or personnel are located outside of California. So I thought that would, help avoid any ambiguity or schools getting in hot water for things that the rule isn't really designed to prevent. My assumption is the rule is designed to ensure that schools, if they're going to be regulated by California, should be California based, but still provide a little flexibility. So Jackie, I don't know if you want comment after each one or questions or.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and take questions round and then we can move on to the next one. Yeah, Greg.
I appreciate what you're trying to do here, Marty. I'm just wondering if some student services is a inherently vague term. If some thought shouldn't be given by the committee to recommending which student services would be appropriate to be located outside California. I haven't thought it through, but I'm wondering, because some is by its nature vague, and the purpose of the guidelines is to provide to clear up ambiguities and vagueness.
So it's interesting, actually, because, I did think about this, and, it's hard because I'm not a fully online school, right? So, we have, our administrative officers are in California. I, as the dean, am in California. But we have a variety of student services that are being provided via personnel in other places. Now, no one ever meets with our students in person anyway, so it doesn't really make a difference to them. So I hadn't thought about, are there certain types of student services that should be off limits being offered via outside of California? I don't know if other schools feel differently or other committee members feel differently.
I see your point, particularly with, so you have schools are wholly online, but I'm also thinking that maybe the committee of bar examiners, this might be something, well, what are we talking about here? And I haven't, well, you all know more than I do about actually administering a law school and what services ought to be located on site for everyone. At least for schools that have maybe we draw a distinction between only online schools and those schools that have their student body in a physical facility on a regular basis. In those cases, it seems to be more important to have, for example, you mentioned career placement. It might be more important to have those on site. again, I haven't thought through it. I'm not making a specific recommendation. I just think before we submit such a guideline to the committee, we ought to think hard about that. If there should be a distinction between online schools and schools that have a physical presence.
Thank you, Greg. Any other comments or questions, Jessica?
I just wanted to comment, at least in terms of online law schools, which I know is a category that's growing for Cal Accredited. I think what makes that difficult is that there are a lot of technology platforms out there that offer good services and resources, but they don't necessarily have to be based in California to do so. Like, for example, Westlaw obviously doesn't just service California, and yet, of course, we're using the tools there that would serve California law students. But if our students are accessing certain services, which is academically related or could be related to an academic project, and the Westlaw reference attorney desk happens to, or, you know, there's a lot of logistics to that. So I think I can see, I'm glad for this guideline because it does go toward some important clarity of what should be in California. I just would counsel from the distance education perspective that it's pretty complex what platforms are there and what services they provide. And some of them are national platforms that have something directed towards California that's appropriate and well benchmarked. So that's my only note of caution in terms of being overly restrictive of some student services to be located in California only, or to be done by California personnel. So.
Thank you, Jessica. Any other, Mike?
Yes, I've got a question. There are, I think what is it, 12, 13 items that are listed there under 4160A. But it seems to me that there needs to be some sort of transitional wording above item number 1 in between the first paragraph of A and the listing of each of those items. In other words, it says here.
Yeah, and so we have to be careful. The rules are out for public comment, so we can't really fiddle with the language that is in the rules.
All right. Well, I guess my point was going to be this, and that is that if there's any ambiguity here, for me, it starts with where those items are listed. I'm not sure if those are the items that the first paragraph is talking about when it states that the schools need to ensure that prospective students and current students are timely informed of information. Is that all of the information that it's referencing in that beginning paragraph? All right.
Many of these were pulled from the actual accredited guidelines as they currently exist. Some of them were added or changed to accommodate the new rules, but many of these already existed in the accredited law school guidelines.
Okay, I understand. And it's too late to put in one sentence that would say the following items are those things that need to be passed on in the way of information to prospective students and students. You
could certainly provide that in a public comment among others that you might want to add in terms of edits or other thoughts you have on them.
All right, I don't think it's important enough to do that, but I thought that if there was time for us to provide anything in the way of a change, that would be something to do, but I understand now. All right, thanks.
Yeah. Any other comment on these proposed guidelines? And again, not anything that we're voting on today. This is just an opportunity to start the discussion. Greg offered some helpful comments, as did Jessica, on the proposed language and a perspective of distance education that we can take into consideration and see whether or not we want to recraft the language and play with it a little bit. As we move forward, I think there's 2 more. And Ashley, if you want to scroll so that we can get to the second rule that Marty identified, that I think was identified even before the rules went out, and that Jessica participated with as well. And so Marty, why don't you take the first stab at describing what was the ambiguity in here?
Dean Gardina, may I interject before we begin this one? Back to the first. So this feedback is specifically from the deans. There may be additional staff or committee feedback going forward. But as to that first regarding location, the guideline indicates some of the things that perhaps don't need to be in California. A couple of things that I might raise for the deans to give an opinion on now or later would be these two. The first one is thinking about what is needed in California to know that the state bar can give official notification of important actions in California. And then also a second item, sometimes it's been challenging when a school stops operation in California, but students need transcripts or have questions or things like that. It's been challenging in the case of a few schools, certainly not a majority, to get that information. And so the more that is outside the state, the less it is inside the state, students may feel at risk. And it might be helpful to know what guarantees could be available to students to make sure that whether the school is open or closed, they can get the things to which they're reasonably entitled. So those two issues about what does need to be in California could be helpful to receive feedback.
Thank you, Natalie. And I recognize that obviously we could get additional feedback as we go through this process, as staff has a chance to look, as well as the CBE members, Paul and perhaps Kareem as well, among others on the Ed Standards Committee. So look forward to that feedback. And so just wanted to move forward with the social media piece.
Yeah, so under 6B, right, it says whenever the words accredited, provisionally accredited appear in law school communications, relation qualification, take the bar exam, or admission practice law in California, they must be accompanied by words clearly indicating that such accreditation is by the Committee of Bar Examiners of the State Bar of California. And, you know, having some experience now, seeing how my school does marketing online and social media, online display ads, I realize that the words accreditations by the Committee of Bar Examiners of the State Bar of California, that phraseology itself is often longer than the entire ad, right? And so certain media, whether it's Twitter or, you know, other, you know, social media ads, there's just not that much space, right? Sometimes they'll have like 70 characters total or 80 characters total. And so, you know, my goal as I was looking through these, as I said, is, you know, I'm not trying to add additional substantive regulations, right? We want the rules to be the body of regulations. I only wanted to clarify, limit, you know, explain what doesn't go beyond the bounds, right? And so because the rule as stated on its face seems fine, but in practice may pose a potential conflict with the realities of the way certain online media work, I wanted to say that, you know, whenever a school uses social media or other platforms that make it impractical to state that language in full, it shall be sufficient for purpose of the rule that a hyperlink to a web page or other document that contains the full required disclosures. So preserving the intent, right, that anytime you're making this claim, you clarify what the nature of the regulation is, what the basis for it is, and trying to balance that with the realities of modern media.
Thank you. And just Jessica, if you want to add like what you saw in it, as well as the experience that you've had at DEAC regarding the same question.
Great. And by the way, when I was looking through on this question, I thought what Dean Pritikin was saying was very sound. It's an issue that distance education institutions definitely have run into if there is more antiquated language in their standards or guidelines about what to do. So the approach that I actually took with this was just speaking a little informally. When DEAC reviewed this in the Standards Committee, that was really at a broad level where we're doing it for a variety of different programs, and there's not necessarily, we couldn't necessarily restrict it too much, because among that variety of programs, there can be a lot of different guidance about what to do for your public disclosures. But the way that we worked through it on the committee was team discussion to draft or modify what was the existing standard, which had some outdated language at that time, and post that for public comment. And we actually found we got a lot of marketing staff at the different institutions who participated in that public comment period, which is a little unusual. But they had a lot of good points in terms of, you know, try to keep to the spirit of what you want us to do on the technology, but don't get too granular, because a lot of it can be achieved in different ways. And taking that in terms of what to recommend here, and I think what Dean Pritikin recommended was fine, but thinking through some of those discussions, I actually went back to ABA standards and WASC just as benchmarks for, in general, what do they want to be happening with public disclosure. And those very much go to the spirit of when there's an important disclosure to make, you know, it should be followed in a certain way. So that's why I have that first line, because that just seemed to be the spirit of why we would even get into the topic of, you know, trying to get this important disclaimer into each and everything that is sending from the school. And something I thought about here is, especially in terms of social media, while a lot of people do see that definitely as institutional promotion, not all of that is advertising necessarily, so there can be confusion. But I just thought where the law school's using public platforms for communication and doing the type of things that are from the state bar guidelines, like report, publicize, or distribute. And that's just the only reason for the difference in that language up front. And the rest of it really goes to what Dean Pritikin already covered. The situation where it's hard for the readable and comprehensive is maximum character limit on different platforms. So my language is very similar to his for those, but just trying to keep to the context of what's surrounding it in the state bar guideline, right? Like the language of that this is for prospective students, and, you know, how are we following through with making sure a public disclosure is available in a readable and comprehensive manner. That can be fulfilled by the law school adding a link to the institution's webpage where those public disclosures are, and making sure it's readily available in platforms such as profiles for institutional social media accounts. That's largely where DAC ended up with that piece of information, which was under more categories of information and advertising and promotion there. But I thought this would be something that would fit more in the cloth of what the state bar rules are saying. So that's a rundown.
And thank you, Marty. Are any questions or thoughts from the committee?
I have one, Jackie.
Yeah, great.
I see the point here and limitations of these platforms and the space, why it might be a good idea to have that here. That runs a little counter to the idea that these are required disclosures, and they're required because the state bar thinks they're very important. I'm wondering if we should add to the guideline, or I know we can't make the change of the rule now, but an additional sentence saying applicants and students are strongly advised to go to these hyperlinks or something like that. So they understand that those disclosures are very important and they should look at them.
Thank you, Greg. Jay or Mike, any thoughts on even your school's use of different platforms? All right. And then I think Marty found just one other place where he thought there might be a need for clarity in this particular section. So Ashley, do you want to scroll to the next piece?
Hey, Jackie, while
the
scrolling is being done, let me just say I was slow to unmute, but the answer to your question is I like that proposal, Marty's proposal. I can't think of a situation now where we would need to take advantage of that type of wording, but it's foreseeable that in the future it could occur. We don't do much on social media now, don't really do anything. We have pay-per-click ads, we have our website, but nothing in the way of social media ads. I'd like to do that at some point. I like the proposal.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, so next, Marty, do you want to explain what you saw here?
Yeah, so this one, I didn't really have as concrete of a suggestion for what language, because I sort of need a little information to know what might, be most important. But basically, this Rule 11 says that in order, a school must maintain complete and accurate records. Specifically, the last sentence says it must maintain sufficient records to demonstrate compliance from its last 2 periodic inspections to the present, right? So that potentially could mean a period of 21 years, right? Because if there are inspections up to every 7 years, which the committee now has discretion to do under the new rules, right? Well, 2 prior inspections, well, no, I guess it would be 14 years, right? Inspection 1, 7 years, inspection 2, and then the current inspection. But still, 14 years is a long time to maintain data to prove compliance with all aspects of the rules. And so to try and minimize the record keeping and organizing burden on schools, but yet still maintain what the committee most cares about, my thinking was you kind of have 2 categories, right? If there was anything that was identified as an area of non-compliance in either of the prior 2 reports, that you need to maintain data on, right? Because the committee needs to be able to say, okay, you weren't in compliance then, now we can compare that to the data since the last inspection, we can see you've come into compliance, right? Otherwise, it becomes difficult because if, the school says, oh, look, we complied last year. It's like, well, that's great, but you didn't for the last 13 years. And so how do we know this isn't just a blip of compliance in a sea of non-compliance, right? So I understand where there's specific areas of concern that have been identified. We need to see that, right? Other than that, my assumption is there's certain categories of data you probably wouldn't need going back more than a few years, right? Student grades, we already need to maintain forever. So that's not going to change. Obviously, certain data is going, high-level data is going to be maintained in the annual reports, right? So if the committee or staff wants to look at trends over time, right, I would assume you could use the annual reports to do that. Beyond that, though, for example, do we need to maintain the final exam that was given in each course for the last 14 years? I'm going just based on my personal experience with our most recent inspection in March, which was both a periodic inspection for an unaccredited school and an inspection as applying for accreditation. I know the team didn't look at a lot of what we had compiled. We had faculty meeting minutes going back 5-7 years, you name it. And so, not that I think it's a bad idea for schools to over maintain records, but for those schools who don't want to, either because of cost, staffing limits, file size limits in their servers, whatever the case may be, I was hoping to try and streamline things so that we still preserve what the committee and staff really care about seeing, but don't overburden schools. So, obviously feedback from staff or others about what is the data that's most likely to be needed and how long does it need to be maintained? Is it 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? Again, I don't want to cut anything off unnecessarily. I'm just trying to find a proper balance between the needs that are undergirding this rule and, trying to make things realistic for schools, given that, as we talked about this revision process, one of the main goals was to minimize costs for students, for schools, that they could then not, make school expensive for the students, right? Affordability, flexibility, all that. So that's that's where the suggestion was coming from. But again, I don't really have the data points to know exactly what categories or would be needed for what period of time, but that was the idea.
All right, thanks, Marty. Any comments from members of the committee? Mike, your hand is up. Is that an old request?
Should not be up.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anyone have any thoughts on this? Jessica.
Sorry, here we go. So just very quickly, I wanted to say that I agree with Marty, especially when it comes to the programs and operations language in the rule. I thought for that reason, this is a very good thing to highlight. And not that it's problematic, but operations is a broad category besides academic programs. It can go into, and I don't think people will, but just it can go into human resources records. It can go into how is your marketing department advertising 14 years ago. And I think there's just a natural limit to necessarily how people are compiling. So what can be compiled, I think definitely can be at the higher level of the annual report or even some sort of support file for that. But I just thought the point that Dean Pritikin is raising is a good one because that language is so broad.
Yeah, all right, thank you, Jessica. Any other thoughts from the committee? Any reflections on the 3 items that were identified or any other items within A that anyone else may have identified as difficult to apply as written? Okay. So it sounds like we got some good feedback on the drafts that were submitted in terms of some clarification, maybe from the CBE and or the staff on exactly what is needed on the administrative office in California concept. We always want to make sure that we're getting at what the intent is and we're solving for whatever the underlying issue is rather than creating regulatory burdens or regulating when we don't need to. So I think some clarification, even in the positive, when the staff or the CBE is concerned about that administrative office, and Natalie spoke to this a little bit with the idea of really a student-centered thinking around that administrative office. And so giving some more thought to what if a guideline is necessary, should it be a student-centered guideline, one that recognizes kind of a California someone wanting an administrative office that they might be able to turn to. I think Greg brought up a good point. Do we need to think about fixed facilities who kind of naturally might have administrative offices and most of their services located in California versus a distance learning school, especially one that's 100% online? And is there more clarification needed there than perhaps for some? And do we need to bring some distinction to that? And then again, on that last one, when it comes to records, what exactly would an inspection team most want access to? And what is it that the school absolutely needs to maintain during that time frame? And is there a way to provide some boundaries or limits to that, or some clarity so that schools aren't trying to maintain records on everything for fear that that they won't have something that the CBE needs?
I have a quick point. So I think what Michael Clancy, Dean Clancy mentioned at the beginning about what's the preface of this A section, you know, that preface paragraph is not here because it's an excerpt, but that it talks about the fourfold purpose. These that we're discussing, they're particularly under consumer protection and transparency for a reason, right? Or else they would be somewhere else. So just in the practice of good contextual reading, if these guidelines will help those rules meet why they're under consumer protection and transparency, I think that would be best.
That's great. Thanks, Jessica. So just, I know that we have one more thing on the agenda that Natalie is going to speak to, and we might be able to end a little bit early today because we really only plan to cover the 4.160A provisions that Marty had identified. But we do have ones for 4.160B, C, and D as well that we can work on in March. But what I did want to talk about just briefly to set the table for it and to think about it, and certainly this is true for our attendees as you review the rules in preparation for public comment, put your administrator hat on and really ask the question, what's it going to be like for me to apply these rules at my school? And is there anything that isn't clear that you think it would be helpful? One of the things that I asked all of the deans to view, and there's several of us on this committee that would meet that jointly accredited status, is to really take a look at, as they read through the rules and they read through the jointly accredited status, is there ambiguity as it relates to the jointly accredited status and any of the rules that they're reading? And I know the jointly accredited status was actually one of those places where the CSBARS recommendation did diverge from the CBE's ultimate recommendation in terms of the number of provisions that would apply to jointly accredited. The CSBARS had a smaller number of provisions that would be that would apply to jointly accredited. That number grew with the CBE for reasons associated with their desire to make sure that they were doing sufficient oversight. I know that when we first started the conversation over 2 years ago, that jointly accredited status was certainly in part to relieve schools from having to manage dual accreditation and meet 2 different sets of standards with 2 different accreditors, but especially when there was overlapping requirements. It was also an effort in some ways to relieve the burden from the State Bar staff, who I have to say is responsible for an enormous amount when it comes to admission to the bar with the registered schools, the Cal accredited law schools, the law school exam, and the moral character determination. So there was some hope that if schools were being having some oversight by another accrediting body for at least some of what they were responsible for, then it might relieve the burden on the State Bar staff and the CBE as well, allowing them to pivot to a lot of the other work that they have on their plate. So one of the questions comes up that although the CBE has indicated that they want to have more oversight than we had originally put in the CSBARS draft, are there guidelines that could be written that provide a middle ground of sorts in those areas where there's overlap? So if WASC has a provision specifically related to X that is substantially similar to what the CBE is concerned about, but is it possible to suggest that that what we provide to WASC or DEAC or HLC is going to be sufficient to meet the rule as well, rather than have to kind of create 2 nuanced but distinct documents or distinct sets of information? And so just to start to think about that jointly accredited status through the lens of, is there a way for us to create and get back to that original intent, still allowing the CBE to have the kind of oversight that they not illogically want to make sure they're maintaining, but still relieve some regulatory burden from the schools as well as from the State Bar staff trying to manage multiple different pieces of paper and information provided from schools that are jointly accredited as well as not jointly accredited. So I wanted to lay the groundwork for that future conversation. I think it will be a fruitful one. I certainly encourage the attendees that are here today, especially deans and those who might be eligible for that jointly accredited status, to view the rules through that lens as well, to see if we can't see if there's anything that we can present to the CBE that might make them feel comfortable and reduce some regulatory burdens. Okay. So just a preview of a future conversation. And then Natalie, I think there's one more thing on our agenda that you'd like to give an update on.
Before you go there, Jackie.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Paul.
One of the immediate or more immediate questions that's going to come up is when the new rules should take effect.
Okay.
You know, and whether we feel it's important to have the guidelines in place at the time they take effect, or we're willing to live for a while in a world where we're still working on the guidelines, but the new rules are in place. The time to set that effective date may be as early as the March meeting of the Board of Trustees, assuming that they don't refer it back to us. They may act as early as then to set that date. And so I think I mentioned it at our last meeting as well, but any feedback that the schools can give us about when they want it to take effect. Do they want it, for example, to maybe wait until the end of the year to give us time to draft guidelines? Do they want it earlier because they're interested in applying for joint accredited status, say as early as the middle of the year? I don't personally have any strong opinions about that, but and you know, would like to be able to accommodate your wishes if you have any particular wishes.
And thank you for that suggestion, Paul. I'm sorry that if I missed it from the last meeting and didn't talk with Natalie about potentially putting that very question on the agenda. And just so I'm clear, perhaps other people have questions about it as well. Is it the CBE that's going to set the implementation date, or the Board of Trustees?
Board of Trustees, but we, you know, through staff can influence that.
Okay, fantastic.
Feedback is appreciated.
Great. And Natalie, I know that the State Bar staff will submit material to the Board of Trustees with any recommendations they might have, depending upon what comes back on public comment, et cetera. When would you be submitting that? Or do we have time at the next CSBARS meeting to actually have this conversation, and then the any feedback we give can be provided then?
I believe that we would aim for the March 18th meeting, and that means materials would be posted somewhere between the 8th and 13th of March. So it would be an interim item, and we can have members provide feedback offline directly to me.
Okay. All right.
You could also put it in your formal comments.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul. I think that's good feedback to anyone that's considering submitting public comment, or if you weren't, but you have a strong sense of the implementation date, certainly. And then Natalie, it sounds like if anyone has specific things that they'd like the staff to know regarding implementation date, they can contact you directly about that.
Right, they can do either. Going through the website makes it part of the public comment record. Going to me directly ensures you know, that can be shared with the leadership team as the board item gets prepared.
Okay, fantastic. Paul, thanks for bringing that to everyone's attention.
Sure.
So the final agenda item, Natalie.
Sure, just give me a quick second. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see the screen? All right, so we don't need a specific decision here, but I just wanted to get a little bit of quick feedback while we are all together. At the last committee meeting, one of the members noticed, as we have on our website, that for unaccredited law schools, they are listed by category, whereas the accredited law schools are not. They asked why, and they asked if they should be. And so I wanted to get a little feedback from you about this. It sounds like an easy question, but it is a little bit more complicated than it seems at first blush. So the issue is really, what is the best way to inform the public of the teaching modalities available at each individual accredited law school? And there need not be only one way, of course. When we think about unaccredited law schools, they are actually required to choose a category and then comply with the statutory requirements for that category under BNP Code 6060. So every unaccredited law school chooses either a correspondence category, distance category, or fixed facility category, and that also binds them to a specific compliance requirement in terms of hours and how they teach. If we compare the accredited category, accredited law schools do not declare a category. Historically, that was because until 2019, the only category that was allowed was a physical fixed facility format in a classroom. Starting in 2019, and the first such schools were accredited in 2020, there is now new flexibility for accredited schools. And this fall school year is the first year in which that is beginning to launch. So now the accredited law school programs must include 80 credits and 1,200 hours of academic engagement that is verified. So you have several tiers at this point. Every accredited law school can offer 12 distance credits. Some accredited law schools have approved hybrid JD programs. Some accredited law schools have approved fully online JD programs. And all accredited law schools are actually currently teaching 100% online due to the pandemic under a committee blanket waiver. So that's very different than what you saw 2019 prior. So we're thinking about what is the best way for prospective students to understand the various modalities now offered. And so the first thing I wondered is what is available out there today? So for example, is there any sort of resource that accredited law schools as a group or as a consortium offer to students to help them know the sorts of modalities that are available? This is certainly not required, but I don't know if this is something that exists or is contemplated. Any thought about that from the deans on our membership? Sounds like it might not be something we have today. Also, we also wonder, is this something that the private sector can or would offer? We know that with the ABA approved schools, there are various publications that do list, rate, discuss, advertise various things. And so that's something that's a possibility too. Certainly the State Bar would not direct the behavior of a private organization. I just wondered if there was anything that people knew about that might make this type of communication out in the public. Dean Park? Oh, sure. I see Dean Park and also then Dean Clancy.
Dean Clancy, you can go ahead.
I was going to ask if it could be done on the State Bar's law school page on the Bar's website. Could there be?
We're going to get there. We're going to get there in a moment, and I have a few specific questions about State Bar doing it.
All right.
So,
and Dean Park?
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate you going through the different modalities that are existing in this period. And I think the waiver definitely complicates things because that waiver, as how it is expressed, gives flexibility. And I think there's a lot of reasons that it is constructed that way. But I think in terms of the consumer protection side, right? Like, do students know what they're getting into, and do they know how they're going to be encountering their coursework? I think that is important that schools are communicating that to those students in this time. And I know that for those on the waiver, for example, they're giving quarterly updates. So maybe as part of that, they could be explaining how they're informing their stakeholders clearly about what their program is. And I think it's hard to mandate something during a time when already the community knows that there needs to be a waiver to help people go through. But I do appreciate that students also need to know what's coming at them. So maybe there's a reasonable medium of that being part of the quarterly updates, at least for those schools that have the waiver. That was my thought there.
And I see Deans Clancy and then Dean Pritikin.
My hand's lowered now.
Okay, Dean Pritikin.
Okay, so, you know, in general, I'm always in favor of making sure you're very clear with students, prospective students, you know, what you're getting in terms of the modality. My concern with trying to sort of categorize the accredited schools, similar to what we did with the unaccredited schools, is that, you know, the unaccredited schools, each category was subject to different requirements, right? In terms of classroom hours versus verified academic engagement. You know, I think the distinction between distance education schools and correspondence schools probably became less meaningful as, you know, all correspondence happened through the internet. And now we have a situation where the accredited schools were changed so that the accredited rules were changed so that online and, you know, correspondence schools could apply for accreditation, right? And are now they're all subject to the same standards. So I'm not sure how you do this because there's not even clean distinctions anymore, right? You have some fixed facility schools that have a hybrid program, right? Where part of the learning is supposed to happen online, part of learning is supposed to happen in person. You've got fixed facility schools that are now moving entirely online. You have some programs where students have the option of what to take online or what in person. So, you know, we don't even have clean distinctions between fixed facility, hybrid online, and fully online anymore. It's kind of more of a fluid spectrum. And so I'm concerned that any attempt to categorize schools or programs within one of these might be artificial and might not really, you know, capture that nuance. So, you know, if there was a clean way to do it, maybe I'd be more, you know, in favor of it, but I'm just afraid that sort of that cat's out of the bag now and there's no way to sort of put it back in.
Dean Gardina.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Marty. And I guess I understand that those categories existed for the registered schools. I understand that we didn't have that for the reasons you articulated. Are you trying to solve for a problem? Because I don't quite understand what this would accomplish first. And second, in part because certainly any student that isn't advised clearly, as Jessica pointed out, about what they're going to experience either in the classroom in whatever form it might take, is going to react to that with a withdrawal or a desire to no longer be part of a program that wasn't clearly explained to them, for one. But I think to Marty's point, even more importantly, and this is certainly true at our school, especially with our most recent major change, I don't think I could define for you categories. I could define for you student experiences within the various modalities that are available to them, but I couldn't say there's category A and there's category B and they're entirely distinct. So I guess I'm worried about what you're trying to solve for and whether or not the state bar should even be involved in solving for it, or whether it's really a school piece. So that's my question.
Okay, do we want to hear from Paul before we address that a little bit? And I've started to advance the slide because you are all, not surprisingly, one step ahead of me. Paul, Mr. Kramer.
Yeah, we're just trying to get feedback here. We had the question from one of our CBE members about whether that would be helpful. I think the idea, as I understand it, is for people who start at the State Bar website to find law schools to consider. If they knew they were interested only in a fixed facility school, for instance, then that would help them eliminate some of the schools that were online only, and they wouldn't spend their time checking them out. But it's you know, I don't think we want to get in the business of trying to categorize you guys either. It's in some ways we're offering you the opportunity to to be able to describe yourself more granularly on that page on our website. If you were enthusiastic about it, I'm not hearing that at this point. Yeah, it's an idea that we're exploring. It's certainly not an initiative that has a lot of momentum behind it yet.
Thanks, Paul. That's helpful clarity, and you're able to pick up on subtle clues really well.
And so to give a little, oh, please, Paul, I apologize. Please continue.
No, I'm done.
Okay, so yeah, so there really are a number of elements to this. So I think the issue is, I think the member was concerned that there might be some students who may now go to the State Bar website and say, I'm interested in learning about, say, online JD programs. They may see distance unaccredited schools and then believe, oh, there must not be any distance accredited schools, which is no longer true. But that's a little bit more complicated. And so it raises, it sounds so easy, but there really are a number of issues. The first one is, what is the right timing? Is any effort, if one should be undertaken, premature, going actually to my last bullet point, because first of all schools are teaching online right now for safety. And second of all, perhaps based on those experiences, when the pandemic concludes, schools may choose to change the way that they taught forever, in some or all ways after the pandemic. And so the information may not long stay current. The second issue is the ability to characterize, and could be laid out for each individual school, or it could be as simple as just on the top of the accredited section of the website explaining accredited schools are afforded additional freedoms and combinations, and you should contact the schools to find out more. And you're already starting to presage my questions about what could be the pluses and minuses. And to be clear, as to each individual school, we have not heard an issue in which a person has said, as I approached this individual school, I was unable to understand what modality they had or what kind of experience I would have when we go there. You know, that wasn't the sense. I think that this member actually was in an online program themselves in another discipline, found that to be very helpful to his life stage and as a teaching modality, and wondered if there would be others who might search for that type of program in particular. So that's kind of where it started. And getting this information about what's out there for them right now or what concerns you would have is really helpful. Oops.
Thanks, Natalie. I recognize that we are at that point in the time frame where the agenda says that we must end according to Bagley-Keene, and I don't know that there's any need to continue. I just ask if there's any last comment on Natalie's questions. And Natalie, if you could even let us know kind of what the follow-up to this will be, but any last questions for Natalie on this? Okay, all right, Natalie, is this something that you'll follow up with the committee on as you get a better sense of what the CBE or State Bar staff are needing more feedback on?
Yes, so this is just the type of feedback that we were hoping for now, and something may be brought back to you in the future if it's something that the committee wishes to pursue as we go forward. So thank you, everyone. That's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. And I again want to thank the deans for all the work that they did before the meeting to review. We will be going through each of those sections that you reviewed and the draft guidelines that you are proposing. We will circle back to the ones that we talked about today as we get closer to that decision about the rules, as well as Paul's comment and question about an implementation date and guidelines being done and ready to be implemented at the same time as the rules. So do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved. All
right. It is good to see everyone, and I will see you in March.
I think that we technically need to second and move to adjourn.
Sorry, I jumped that. We do not have to take a roll call vote on adjournment, do we?
I think so.
We have not been generally. I actually not sure that matters.
Yeah, I think turning off our Zoom might be the vote. So we can just do it silently then by turning off our Zoom.
Departing has been seen as acceptance.
I will see you in March. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, and we still have a few attendees.
Yes, I'm going to stop recording.
Thank you.